place to hide. No place to run. No place to run. The mutant age has now begun. X-Men, X-Men, this is the day, this is the day. X-Men, X-Men, coming.
Hey, it's a podcast. My name is Matt Waters. I am the British half of this X-Men contingent, and I am joined as always by my transatlantic guest, Mike Thomas. How's it going out in the US of A?
They said we wouldn't make it. They said it couldn't be done. But we're here.
Well, here we are. We reviewed every goddamn X-Men film. We talked about the ones that haven't been made yet. And now we are just literally clutching at straws and reviewing cartoons, for God's sakes.
And talking about them.
Well, yeah, sure. Not a lot of reviewing will be going on with some of these. But, yeah, so the X-Men have quite famously appeared in animated form quite a lot over the years. We're not going to go through the animated series episode by episode, possibly to the sadness of some. But we are going to talk about some vague topics here. But long before the acclaimed X-Men the Animated Series, the X-Men were appearing in cartoons as early as 1966. Mike, I didn't delve this far back, but I understand you did. So what have you got for us?
Alright, so the X-Men appeared in a 1966 episode of the Marvel Superheroes TV show with Professor X commanding... Now, I'm actually legit just reading from Wikipedia at this point, but I did watch it. Commanding the original X-Men lineup of Cyclops, Beast, Marvel Girl, a.k.a. Jean Grey, Angel, and Iceman. And they appeared in this weird episode with Doctor Doom and Namor. Is that how you say it? Namor?
Namor, yeah.
And the animation's really bad. The dialogue's really bad. It's not really worth watching, but it was kind of neat to actually see... Like, you know, it's legitimately the first time that the X-Men appeared in some sort of TV show or movie, so it was worth to, like, take a glance at. It's on YouTube. It's on Dailymotion. You can Google it. It's not particularly exciting. Like, if the animation... If you've ever seen the very first adaptation of The Hobbit, it's like a 10-minute short animated film, and, like, the animation is on that level. It's pretty bad. But, you know, it happened.
Yeah, they would have been pretty young at that point. They hadn't debuted in comics that much before then, so it's exciting that they already had faith in them to put them in cartoons.
Yeah, I think the most notable thing is that they were not called the X-Men, but the Allies for Peace. Not the nearly catchy of a name overall.
The Allies of Peace, right. We need to rename this podcast.
Allies for Peace.
The Allies for Peace, sorry. Yeah, we need to rename this podcast and everything. We need to change it all with that naming.
So I don't know what was going on there. I don't know much about this beyond I watched like half of it before I gave up.
See, and he's a dedicated expert, and he had to tap out halfway, so that tells you a lot. So moving from one old, not very well animated cartoon to another, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. So Iceman, who is of course an X-Men, is part of every single episode. But again, we're not going to review it all. But there are some notable episodes featuring more X-Men. And Mike forced me to watch one of them, and I refused to watch any more. But I understand he did watch some others.
Oh no, I ran out of time.
Oh, okay. He ran out of time. I'm making claims I can't back up here.
But so Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends was a TV show that followed Spider-Man, Iceman, and Firestar around, and they were like a trio of heroes in New York City, you know. And Iceman did come from the X-Men within that show, so they visited them 2 or 3 times. I think the most famous one is the one called the X-Men Adventure, where they're just hanging out in the X Mansion and like some random villain from Firestar's past shows up, and you get to see Professor X, Cyclops, some of their labeling Sprite, but I think it must have been Kitty, Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus, and Thunderbird.
Yes.
Thunderbird was a Native American mutant whose power was that he could turn into animals.
In this television show, yes.
Yeah. I'll leave you to. I'll leave the audience to assume how I feel about that. That is a real mutant though from the X-Men.
Yeah, it's Warpath's older brother who tragically died almost immediately after he was introduced.
Yeah, they didn't just make him up for this show.
No, they made up Firestar for the show, and she has since made her way into the comics. But Thunderbird is real, and for some reason is turning into bears.
Yeah. So I didn't get the chance to watch the other two. I might actually go back and watch them at some point, just because I'm pretty cool like that. But the animation's pretty bad. The dialogue's really bad. The story's bad. You do get to see the Danger Room, though, so that's kind of neat. It's the first appearance of the Danger Room, so.
They beat Bryan Singer to it by decades.
Yeah. From there, we move on to what I think for people my age would be a rather infamous VHS rental from Blockbuster. The Pryde of the X-Men.
Hold up. They let you rent this?
This was oh yeah.
I thought this was like a failed pilot that just made its way around.
No, it was a failed pilot, but they put it out on videotape for people to rent stuff like that. Oh yeah, for sure. Because I had seen this a million times as a kid.
This is something I had always heard of, but I saw it for the first time researching this episode, and it's something.
Yeah, and this is not only that though. There was an arcade game based on this, which was always notable to me because it had Dazzler in it, and Dazzler was never an X-Men I really knew much about. But yeah, I had a friend who confirmed that he rented this from Blockbuster a million times too.
Wow.
So this was a failed X-Men. This was a failed pilot for an X-Men TV show. They do about maybe an entire television series worth of arcs in this one episode. Not just one season. I think everything they do in this episode could have been stretched out over 3 to 4 seasons.
I legitimately don't think I've ever seen anything move so fast as this does.
It is absolutely incredible. The premise is that Kitty Pryde has been recruited by Charles Xavier, psychically, mind you. I think maybe there was a letter involved, too.
Yeah.
And she reports to the X-Mansion. That's why it's called Pryde of the X-Men, because she's going to be the new character that allows the audience to get to know everybody because she has to be introduced to everything. So she shows up, and she gets introduced to the X-Men team. This X-team is Professor X, Cyclops, Storm, Wolverine, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Dazzler. This isn't just any Wolverine, though. Matt, what is so special about this Wolverine?
This Wolverine is an Australian dickhead.
To be fair, I don't think being a dickhead's pretty in character.
Yeah, but he's kind of worse than normal here.
Yeah. He's Australian.
He's got so Australian.
The most obnoxious Australian accent ever.
Yeah. If you think Pyro's Australian accent in some of the cartoons is bad, this is way worse.
Yeah, this is belligerent. He sounds like he must be drunk all the time. Nightcrawler, kind of a creep.
Mm-hmm.
Dazzler, I've always never I don't think anything of Dazzler, so it's always weird to me that she's in this one.
She's kind of fun.
Yeah. She's got, I guess, neat powers. And, it's just a very... I would love to know... I would love to see read an oral history of this one. It's how do they decide on these characters? How do they decide on this? Anyway, so in this one episode alone, the White Queen, that's Emma Frost, right?
It is. Don't
name her. She breaks Magneto out of prison. Magneto goes to Asteroid M. Oh, excuse me. First of all, Magneto sets the Blob, Pyro, and Toad just cause a distraction. Magneto and the Juggernaut then attack the X-Mansion. The only people left in the X-Mansion are Professor X and Kitty. Kitty fails, obviously given a lot of responsibility, fails to keep the brain of Cerebro, the power source of Cerebro. Magneto takes the power source of Cerebro to Asteroid M. I don't think it's called Asteroid M, but it's Asteroid M.
It might as well be, yeah.
Magneto is using the power source of Cerebro to pull a comet to destroy the Earth.
Yep.
And so the X-Men go to Asteroid M. And then probably in my genuine favorite bit, I really like how they pair off one at a time.
Yeah.
I just thought that was neat as a kid. So I have a lot of nostalgia for it. It doesn't really make sense from a tactical standpoint, but what I'd say, Wolverine pairs off with Toad. Colossus pairs off with Juggernaut. Oh, yeah, with Juggernaut. Dazzler pairs off with the White Queen, which doesn't seem like even. Oh, no, with Pyro. Cyclops with the White Queen. Storm disappeared. Maybe she's flying the ship. I don't know what happens there. And Nightcrawler pairs off with the Blob, which Nightcrawler just simply, bumps past him. And basically, Nightcrawler and Kitty, who already have already developed a creepy relationship where Nightcrawler's creepy and Kitty hates him because he's creepy. So it seems like Nightcrawler has to sacrifice himself somehow to save everybody, and everyone thinks Nightcrawler dies, and Kitty, gets the power source back to the ship or something, and then Nightcrawler somehow saves himself, and they save the world. This is in 18 minutes.
Yeah, you just described the plot of a film.
18 minutes of cartoon action fun.
You can sum up some of the actual films in the franchise quicker than that.
I mean, you definitely can do it with the Wolverine. The Wolverine is less complicated than that.
Yeah.
Oh my god, this was the pilot.
Well, they wanted to show you everything that they were going to do in one episode.
Yeah, we don't even get to that. The dialogue is just awful. Awful. The characterization Magneto is he's literally they label him just strictly a terrorist, and that's what he acts like. He's literally trying to destroy the planet.
Yeah, he calls their group the Brotherhood of Mutant Terrorists.
Yeah,
that's how they refer to themselves.
Yeah, all shades of grey forgotten and ignored.
It just looks like an episode of G.I. Joe that went really weird. Yes.
Yeah, the opening theme song is
my god.
That's going to be the opening for this episode, and probably in all future episodes. It's something special. Anyway, it's on YouTube. It's everywhere. It's pretty infamous. If you haven't seen it already, you should go see it.
I had heard about this theme song, but I was fully not ready because I hit play on this episode and was settling down to watch it, and I had to pause it after about 4 seconds because I couldn't handle it and had to restart.
Yeah, it's I don't know what I just don't know what happened here. It feels like something where it's just the wrong time period. It just animation. It's crazy how much animation involved though in 2 years after this so this I think everyone needs to see it.
Yeah, it's quite something. I'm really surprised they included irrelevant details like Juggernaut and Xavier being stepbrothers.
I know.
They hammer it home. He repeatedly says dear stepbrother and all this stuff, and they just go to space it's no big deal.
Brother.
It's everywhere. I can't even. Lockheed is in it. Lockheed the tiny dragon.
Yeah. Doesn't Magneto kick him or something?
Yeah, he kicks him. He's like a pet of the Brotherhood of Mutant Terrorists, and he kicks him.
Yeah, but I think because this was at Blockbuster, there was an arcade game when arcade games based on it when arcade games were still popular. I think that's why this one is always kind of latched on with certain people, including myself. But this is the first attempt to make an X-Men TV series, so it is fairly significant in that sense. And
with Stan Lee's narration and everything. Take a good look at your classmates. One of them might be a mutant, terrifying everyone who's watching.
And it's very easy to find. Just look up Pryde of the X-Men. It's incredible.
So from them flying far too close to the sun with Pryde of the X-Men, they only a matter of years later bring out the revered X-Men the Animated Series. Largely the reason me and Mike are friends, I would say. So there's 5 seasons, and obviously we're not going to go over all of it, but what we agreed on is we would look at some of the key stories that got adapted into films, such as the Dark Phoenix saga, stuff with Apocalypse, Days of Future Past. I think watched a lot more of this than Mike did to prepare here, so I really don't know where you want to go with this first. We got Days of Future Past, we got the Phoenix saga, we got Apocalypse.
I can talk most about Days of Future Past because I watched it twice. And I watched Apocalypse a while. Like, I watched it like 2 or 3 weeks ago, so I don't remember that as well. And I was not able to find the Dark Phoenix saga, so that I cannot talk beyond what I remember of it.
Yeah. I will say some of the stuff I remembered being really good wasn't, and some of the stuff I had no memory of was good. So it's funny what nostalgia will do to you.
And that we can transition quickly that with Days of Future Past because, whenever I try to rewatch this, I always kind of give up after a couple episodes because I really don't like the dialogue a lot of the time. I find it very distractingly bad and stilted. But Days of Future Past, it's only 2 episodes, but it's a pretty solid mini arc in the show. And I really liked how they did it for the most part. Basically, Wolverine is the only X-Men left in the future, and he and Forge have a plan to send Wolverine back in time to prevent the assassination of Senator Kelly, right? But Wolverine gets caught by Bishop, who is, for some reason, wearing X-Men gear, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I mean...
Unless they maybe in the future, the X-Men title's been co-opted by the Sentinels, I guess.
Bishop essentially hero worships the X-Men, and for whatever reason he doesn't know that Wolverine is one in this episode, but that's his whole character. He thinks of the X-Men as this amazing group of heroes that he wants to be.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's always been whenever he goes back and meets them, it's like, oh my god, it's my heroes, and they're right here, and I'm one of them now.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I don't know why he wouldn't know Wolverine was an X-Men.
So he captures Wolverine because he's a stooge for the Sentinels. The Sentinels finally decide. This is all the first 3 minutes, by the way.
Yeah.
The Sentinels decide that Bishop is no longer needed, so Wolverine and Bishop escape, and they go to Forge. And Wolverine's about to go in time, but they, the last second, decide to send Bishop back in time because he's younger.
It's true.
This seems very rushed. Other than this is the only part that I was like, okay, let's calm down. We did not need that to be so rushed. But anyway, they send Bishop back in time, and the key thing is that Bishop cannot remember why he's being sent back in time. And he kind of gradually remembers more and more and more and more and more. And it's eventually revealed it's because that Gambit was the assassin of Senator Kelly. So he finally figures out he's got to kill Gambit. And the whole point is they kind of keep it a mystery in the future. They say, how are you going to be able to kill an X-Men? How are you going to be able to kill an X-Men? And so we don't know, as the audience, we don't know which X-Men it is until it's revealed to be Gambit. Chaos ensues. Gambit is pissed off that no one believes him, that he doesn't think that he could possibly do it. So everybody converges on DC, Washington DC, where Senator Kelly is, and Gambit is the first to get there. And it's revealed that there is a Gambit trying to kill Senator Kelly, but it's actually Mystique. Bishop then shows up and knocks out both of them. And then Rogue shows up to save Gambit from Bishop, as Bishop wants to kill both of them to be sure. Rogue sends Bishop back in time. Rogue then saves Mystique because Mystique reveals herself to be her long-lost adopted mother. Okay, so this one moves pretty quickly, too, for 2 episodes. And also at the same time, the Mystique had, meanwhile, episodes prior, had tried to kidnap Rogue and turn her into a slave of Apocalypse. So, anyway, they save this day, but they don't save the future, as we learn. Bishop returns to the future, and Wolverine's adamantium skeleton is in like a test tube or, a giant test tube, and the future is still rather dystopia-like. So, to be continued. But that was the official Days of Future Past arc in the X-Men show, and Bishop would return at later times.
Yeah. It's kind of... it's using the name and a very loose version of the plot, but it's... I don't know, it's... The first episode, I think, it's very Bishop-heavy with him, like, trying to acclimatize to the past and stuff, and I didn't like that as much. But I like the second episode more. I think it's fun, them sort of racing to stop this assassination, and Gambit saying stupid stuff like, surprised to see me, I know I am. Yeah.
But that was just like, that was the dialogue style of the show.
Yeah, I didn't remember the dialogue. Just generally rewatching a lot of this, I didn't remember the dialogue being as bad as it is. But hey,
I've been telling you this for years, and you always dismissed me for it. I'm like, no, dude, it's just not that good. The dialogue's just not good.
I know that now. Just in my mind, it was all so perfect.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to watch Batman the animated series now.
That one ages better in like the scene by scene stuff. Although the difference between the two is that Batman was far more episodic and X-Men was far more into the serialized storylines. Mm-hmm. If you could just combine the strengths of the two, you would have one great animated TV show that you could look back on very fondly.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think some of these episodes are pretty good and memorable.
Oh, no, and I think the past was way better than I expected. I was kind of worried about it. But I thoroughly enjoyed it pretty much from beginning to end, minus a few really bad dialogue moments.
Yeah. So Apocalypse is all over the place. I forgot how much he's in it. In my head, it was like 4 or 5 episodes, but he's in a lot. He's sort of behind the scenes for most of the first season. Right from the very first episode, he is pulling strings, but his first sort of major episode, which sort of emulates the plot of X-Men Apocalypse, the film, it's called Come the Apocalypse. It's the 10th episode of Series 1. And it really isn't anywhere near as good as I remembered. But essentially, Apocalypse, for confusing reasons, hates everyone. And he is advertising a cure for mutants using Mystique under a different identity, and then anyone who comes in to get this cure, he brainwashes them and turns them into a horseman. Most notably, he does this to Angel, who isn't a regular cast member. Turns him into Archangel. He's got his horseman. The X-Men beat him quite easily. Archangel turns back against Apocalypse after Rogue absorbs some of his power. It's not great at all. But it does end up coming back with the better episode, Obsession, like 2 seasons later, where it turns out Archangel has been, as the title suggests, obsessively looking for ways to kill Apocalypse ever since his encounter with him. And he obviously fails, but Beast, because he's a ladies' man, manages to romance a sentient computer that operates Apocalypse's ship, and he convinces it to take Apocalypse far, far away. And that episode is a bit better, but turns out Apocalypse isn't the compelling, well-voiced hero I remember him being.
No. I did like that, they just focused on Apocalypse and didn't, do half-hearted attempts to focus on the horse people, and Apocalypse. Like, I thought that was an improvement. It's like you got to either do, if you're not going to do, we'll get into the X-Men Evolution adaptation of it, which was far more epic in scope and all that. But overall, I think this kind of really hammered home that Apocalypse is not that interesting of a villain.
He can be, but he has not been on screen that often.
I think the margin of error is much smaller with him than with other villains in X-Men.
Yeah, he's kind of ludicrous in nature, so you're either going to get it right or you're going to very much get it wrong. I will say, I think the best appearance of Apocalypse is as a 4-parter called Beyond Good and Evil, where it's revealed he ended up outside of time and he's trying to gather up famous psychics and use them to break time. And that sounds dumb, but it's actually a pretty good 4-parter. You get Psylocke in there and all these cool characters appearing, and Bishop's there, and it's pretty cool. But and the best part is him fighting Cable in the future. That's always, I think, quite fun.
Yeah, I was not too impressed. You know, like, I didn't really understand Apocalypse as a kid, like what he was or what he was wanted, and I always knew he was important. And this kind of hammered home, you know, maybe there's a reason I didn't understand him.
Well, it's hard to explain some of the concepts to kids, so they just make him out and out evil.
Yeah, not terribly impressed, I would say. That was my takeaway. I really enjoyed Days of Future Past. This was not as interesting.
I think the Beyond Good and Evil 4-parter is better than his other appearances, but yeah, he those 2 big episodes that get talked about are not good. Talking of big episodes, they devoted 9 episodes to the plight of Jean Grey as the Phoenix. There is a 5-parter called the Phoenix Saga, and then a 4-parter called the Dark Phoenix Saga. So that's a large chunk. That's basically a full season's worth of Phoenix stories. And I think I really vividly remember being a kid and seeing the Dark Phoenix stuff. And I remember, like, you know, I would watch X-Men every week or whenever it was on and be like, oh my god, Jean Grey's evil now, what the hell? And think, you know, this blew my mind when I was a child. So I think that's a large part. A lot of people hold the Phoenix stories dear, and why, you know, it got so incredibly... it was not good when Brett Ratner decided to do his version of it. So I thought, you know, let's see if the animated series holds up there. And it does in ways, but... So with the Phoenix Saga, it's kind of hit and miss, as all of the X-Men space stories are, but Xavier's having weird dreams, there's a space mission, it goes wrong. Jean is the only one that can pilot this shuttle back to Earth because she can telepathically absorb the knowledge of how to fly the shuttle from the actual pilot, but then she can shield everyone with her telekinesis, so... she flies it back in, and as a process gets the Phoenix in her and is in a coma, and everyone's worried, and all this weird stuff happens with people from space, including the awful character Eric the Red, and there's an invading empire, and everyone's favourite Superman knockoff Gladiator turns up, and Phoenix fights him easily, and blah 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 blah. Phoenix is super powerful. All of that is really just to set up the much better Dark Phoenix Saga, in which basically the Hellfire Club corrupt Jean into being evil temporarily, and they're all like, oh no, Jean's mind controlled. She snaps out of it, but the effect of being sort of used and toyed with and briefly corrupted has made the Phoenix angry, and she now becomes the red colour schemed Dark Phoenix, and she destroys a galaxy. And in the comics, this was quite famous because it was an inhabited galaxy, whereas they bailed on that decision quite quickly and changed it so that it was uninhabited. And it seems that Jean has gained control back over the Phoenix and everything's fine, but quite naturally, you know, people from space who just had a galaxy destroyed in front of them are like, maybe this isn't cool, and they come and demand that the Phoenix be executed. And there's a big trial by combat, essentially, that the X-Men lose. But then Xavier realizes, okay, Jean is really, really dangerous, and uses his telepathy to revive the X-Men, and is encouraging them to stop Phoenix by any means necessary. And Cyclops is reluctant to do so, obviously, because it's the love of his life. He does eventually try, fails, and Jean... much like in the comics, she telepathically forces guns on herself, which seemingly kills her, but then Phoenix leaves her body and Jean is brought back to life. It's a lot to explain, but it is actually pretty good, and the Dark Phoenix Saga in particular, it follows the plot of the comics far more closely than a lot of the arcs did, to the point that they gave Chris Claremont a writing credit on it. And it delves into some of the stuff about Phoenix that I think has been missing from other adaptations that is interesting, such as it's this duality of like, was this Jean or was this the Phoenix when you look at the bad things she's done? Because it's always looked at elsewhere as, oh, she's under control, she's under something's control and we just have to save her. But it's a little bit more subtle than that, where it's like, I mean, if you are an outside observer who doesn't know Jean Grey, to you, this is the same. You know, Jean Grey is the one that did these things, and I think it was interesting to tackle who is truly responsible for this. And you got Jean saying to Cyclops, like, yes, I can control this, but every second, every day, forever, without being able to lose control, I can't do it. And wanting to die. It's like a surprisingly more nuanced handling of this character than you actually got from quote-unquote serious films.
Yeah, I really remember the trial. I always thought the trial by combat was cool.
Yeah.
I always thought that was real. I don't know. I always really liked, because the cartoon was always had a lot more freedom and ease of doing these giant battles with all the X-Men using all their powers at the same time, and that's never really truly been realized on film in an effective way.
I think the closest we've had is them all getting slaughtered by the Sentinels in Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favourite scenes. So,
yeah. That felt like the first time they even tried to do it. At the end of Apocalypse a little bit, but really, not really.
Nah.
Yeah, I think I'm just... my memories is I'm tired of the Jean Grey stuff. Like, I'm tired of the Phoenix stuff. I don't think it's nearly as interesting as most memory dictates that it is, or most people seem to think that it is. I think maybe in theory it's interesting, but I don't know. I just don't think it's been done in a way that I find interesting yet.
Well, it's difficult because it is the most famous X-Men story, and it got changed. Like, the editorial team essentially bottled it. Like, they had this vision where Jean was responsible for the death of all these people, and then Jean was going to die and stay dead. And then they couldn't handle the idea that a heroic character, a beloved character, was A, dying, and B, had essentially murdered billions of people. So they changed it all quite rapidly, and I think that only added to the sort of the legacy of the Phoenix stories. And like, it is the thing that if you're going to do any X-Men adaptation, sooner or later you're going to do the Phoenix. It's just going to happen. It's the biggest story.
And I think, it's kind of unfortunate is that I prefer X-Men away from space. I don't think they're meant to be in space. But the space one here was infinitely more fun, as I recall, than the other one.
Yeah, like I said, every time they go to space, it's very hit and miss. I think the Dark Phoenix is the best they ever did it, but yeah, I'd rather they stayed on Earth.
I don't know. It's just a tricky line to walk with the Phoenix. You don't know. I feel like there's just such an unwillingness to go all the way with it. Like, this kind of has to result in someone's death, and it's kind of got to result in Jean's death. And I think most properties associated with comic books hesitate to go there.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, the films kind of did, for the most part.
Well, it's an easier commitment there.
Yeah.
But when you've got a thing that is ongoing, weekly, monthly, whatever, seemingly forever, it is... I really wish they did have the balls to keep characters dead more often, because whenever they do a big event, a character dies, and it's always either a really throwaway character no one cares about, or they're coming back, like, within a year. Like, Wolverine's been dead in the comics for about a year now. I think just over a year. And people are literally counting the days until they just decide, you know what, Wolverine's alive again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tricky. I think that's maybe the inherent problem with it, is that you're creating stakes where it's nearly impossible to not end with death.
Yeah.
And you're in a medium that death is just rejected on a story level. Like, you just don't. Yeah. It doesn't mean anything, and everyone's hesitant to do it.
It's the same with Batman. Like, he's capturing all these psychopaths, and he's refusing to kill anyone and everything. But the Joker is constantly breaking out and killing people, and it gets to a point where you're like, you should probably really kill this dude. But obviously, from a narrative perspective, it would end in him capturing him, and that would be it. But when you need villains every month, and you have an incredibly popular one, of course he's going to have to keep breaking out, and they're going to have to keep acting like, oh, we'll just go catch him again. It's the downfall of... Yeah, they're slaves to that idea of having to have villains constantly.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't have inherently fond feelings for the Phoenix Saga in any way. Even though I always feel like they can do it better, so I always kind of like enjoy that they try, but
yeah,
it's almost always a letdown.
I do think there is a story to be told in the idea of who is like putting her on trial. Like, who did this? Was it the Phoenix? Was it Jean? Like,
yeah, I feel like you can probably do that in a subtler way, though, without, involving an actual trial and involving actual people doing it. It's like, I think you can do that internally within the X.
Yeah, I just mean tackling the moral issue of who is of responsibility and all of that. But yeah, the Phoenix Saga is very bloated and needs cutting down. The Dark Phoenix Saga is better. But I can see what you're saying.
It's long. The Dark Phoenix one's 5 and the Phoenix is 4, right?
Nope, other way around.
Oh, okay.
They gave a lot of episodes to just like the Phoenix doesn't even appear in the first episode of the Phoenix Saga, so it's and then they waste time with like she's in a coma or she's in hospital for a while and Xavier starts going crazy and then. Yeah, the Dark Phoenix is a lot more like, okay, the Hellfire Club want her, the Hellfire Club have her, she breaks free and goes mental, and then there's the trial and she is fine. So it's more to the point. Let's move on to a somewhat... I don't know how to characterize the legacy of X-Men Evolution. I kind of think of it as the forgotten series.
Which is weird because it's longer than Wolverine the X-Men. It's more recent than X-Men the Animated Series. And it came out at the height of the not the height of popularity, but the height of the critical acclaim of the X-Men films, which is happened between 2000 and 2003. I think the major issue holding it back is that it had basically a gimmick of it being like, hey, it's all the X-Men, but they're in high school. It's like, and Senator Kelly is their principal. It's just kind of like, it's a little, it's like there's that little Muppet Babies thing to it where it's just like, they all happen to be young at the same time. And I think they struggled with that concept. I just think that concept just holds them back. Like, it's hard to take it seriously. They're all legit in high school. Yeah. Like,
I actually like aspects of that, but I wasn't. I think I may have seen it all at some point. If I did, I was a kid. The only X-Men Evolution I've seen since I was young is this supercut that we're going to talk about in a minute. So maybe it's annoying over several seasons, but when you're dipping in and out of it like we were here, and having like the Brotherhood as like basically a dick frat. It's kind of fun in ways.
It was more... I think if you started beginning where it's very episodic and like each episode introduce a new X-Men, it's a little bit tedious.
Yeah.
And it would be tough. It would be tough to go back to the beginning and watch it. But it does get... I think by season 2, it basically gets to a point where you can more easily get into the show. But the good thing is the show was always very ambitious. Had a sprawling cast, lots of characters to go back to. Introduced almost all of the main characters that you would want to see. But overall, it is forgotten is kind of a good word for it because it was around for 4 seasons and no one really talks about it. No one really has any feelings on it. It seems.
Yeah. The legacy of the show for me is they created my favorite X-Men character, X-23. So there you go.
Wait. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, she's in 2 episodes, I think. But yeah, they invented her here, and then she got translated over, and she is now Wolverine. So
there you go. There's
the legacy of the show. Yeah, so what we're going to be talking about here is, because again, we're not going to watch every episode. Mike actually found this. I'm sure many other people are aware of it, but essentially they took someone has taken all of the episodes involving Apocalypse and sort of cut them together into an animated film of sorts. And I did the research and I found out which episodes it is. Mindbender, which is Series 2, Episode 10. Under Lock and Key, which is Series 3, Episode 9. And then Dark Horizon Parts 1 and 2, Series 3, 11 and 12. Impact, Series 4, Episode 1, and Uprising, Uprising, Series 4, Episode 5, and then Ascension, Parts 1 and 2, which is Series 4, the last 2 episodes, 8 and 9. Yeah, that took a while for me to figure out. I had to watch it and then go back and look at the plot descriptions, but if you were so interested, those are the individual episodes, but this supercut is readily available. It's on our Facebook page, Mike and Matt's X-Cellent Adventures, if you did want to watch it. And I do suggest that you do, because it was pretty good. I didn't like the very beginning episode, but it gets better as it goes along, and it's surprising, like you said, how ambitious this was. That if you think about, they were laying the seeds for this at the end of Series 2, and it leads all the way into the very final episodes 2 seasons later, without it being a constant thing. Like it jumping from the end of Series 2 to the end of Series 3, and then into parts of 4. Like it's surprisingly, as you said, ambitious.
Yeah, it's the end game plot of the series for sure. Which kind of makes sense. I mean, like if you're gonna, I guess it must be tempting to use Apocalypse in that way. But I think if we learn from the movie and we learn from this, there's kind of a drawback there because it's really such a good versus evil plot, and there's not a ton of nuance to Apocalypse whatsoever. One thing I really liked, though, their 2-minute maybe background on Apocalypse that basically Beast figures out by looking at some hieroglyphics.
Yes.
And that kind of made me turn to someone and be like, yo, could they have done a 90-minute Apocalypse movie where he's the hero of the movie? For his origin?
Absolutely, they could.
For his origins, and then he's the villain of the next movie. And I feel like it would just be a far more richer story if you did that, because his origin story kind of allows for a relatively shades of gray hero. It's pretty clearly he's the sympathetic figure, but he's also kind of fairly violent and surrounded by fairly violent people. And it seems like, you could very easily tell a compelling story with him.
Yeah, young Apocalypse is certainly he's not an evil character. I wouldn't go as far as to call him heroic, but he's certainly more on that side of things than he is evil. Like going up against the tyrannical pharaoh and surviving all the hardship he does. Yeah, I don't know how many people would go see a movie that was just starring Apocalypse, but creatively, artistically, yeah, that probably would be a good way to go, where it culminates in him, getting his power, and then, or the bulk of his power, and then you turn it around. But yeah, I think while he's not as nuanced here, I think this does the best job I've seen of selling how powerful he is in terms of films and cartoons.
Yes. Basically what happened is he's using Mesmero to progressively trick more people into unleashing Apocalypse over time. And as you said, it's happening over basically the last half of the show, but sporadically. And basically Magneto's trying to stop him in his way. The X-Men are trying to stop Mesmero in their way. And Magneto's way fucks up because it basically causes Magneto to kill the one creature designed to always prevent Apocalypse from being released. And
it's a big crazy spider.
Yeah. To be fair, it looked like a pretty villainous, evil spider, so I was kind of with Magneto on that one. And I think what was really nice is that Magneto takes it kind of personally that he fucked up, and he becomes very determined to kill Apocalypse as a result, and Apocalypse seemingly kills Magneto in that. Before, there's also all this stuff with Rogue, Nightcrawler, and Mystique, because Mystique, obviously is their mother, and that they all have mommy issues as a result. And Mystique is seemingly turned to stone by Apocalypse, so it seems like Mystique has been destroyed by Apocalypse, and, Rogue and Kurt Wagner are very sad about it. And then, so all this leads to Xavier kind of being like, okay, I have to go take care of this. So he and Storm go to take down Apocalypse, and Apocalypse seemingly kills them. How many people have been killed now by this point, man?
Several, including a giant spider.
But no, how many of our famous mutant characters have been killed?
3, 4?
4.
4.
That should have been our clue.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to set you up there.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's a good way to let the audience know we did not script these moments out. So, the X-Men, elements of the Brotherhood, elements of the... Actually, I guess all the... Actually, I don't think Sabretooth does at this point, but several acolytes, and even Nick Fury is in on the action because he tries to stop all this with the Sentinels, which obviously would not have been a very fun ending. So the X-Men go to take down Apocalypse. But meanwhile, Apocalypse has revealed his 4 horse people. And they are, of course, Magneto, Xavier, Storm, and Mystique, who are all stationed at one place or another. And so the mutants who go take them down have to divide up into teams to take them down. And, almost like every single one of those teams, like there's some like personal connection involved to them. It's fairly clever. I think it's like, Jean has to take down Xavier. Spike has to take down Storm. Wanda has to take down Magneto. Kurt Wagner has to take down Mystique. It's all carefully laid out. All these moments are designed to pay off one another. Anyway, they're all failing, essentially, right? And then Rogue shows up at the last minute, steals the power of this little kid whose power is basically to kill... he's basically Leech, right?
He is Leech, yes.
Okay. And then Rogue uses the power of Leech to shut down Apocalypse, right? Is that what happened? I just watched this last night. I should remember.
Yeah, you should. Basically, whenever Leech is around a mutant, he switches off their power. Which raises questions how Rogue took his power. But we'll let that giant loophole go.
Well, the only thing I'll say in defense is that it seems to happen relatively randomly with Leech. He doesn't really...
I guess because he's a kid. It's
it just kind of happens. Like, he doesn't have real control of it. Anyway, and then Wolverine helps Rogue entomb Apocalypse once more.
Yes, and they fire him off into space, I think.
There you go. And you get a really, really... you kind of get a... I don't know, have you ever heard of 6 Feet Under?
Yeah.
I don't know, I didn't watch it, but apparently the finale is just like a montage of literally find out the end of every single character, like through a montage. And it's essentially happened here. You see all the things that are going to happen to the X. Because with Charles' time, with Apocalypse and all that jazz, he saw the future. And you see, the growing anti-mutant sentiment, teasing what I would assume is Days of Future Past. You see Magneto helping the New Mutants. You see Jean turning into the Phoenix. You see basically all the X-Men united under one banner. The Brotherhood are fighting for S.H.I.E.L.D. Nimrod is there. And then, one giant picture with everyone happy. So it's kind of like it's about 2.5 hours long, but it's, it captures a lot. And it ends on a fairly, happy, sad moment.
Yeah. I really like the way they used, visions of the future from Apocalypse's head to wrap up the whole show like that. I think it was quite effective. And
I'm guessing they wanted the show to go on, but this was kind of a sad, happy, like I said, a sad, happy way, satisfying way to end it.
Yeah, sort of plan as if it might end, but hope that it doesn't. Like, leave stuff to do in future seasons. You mentioned the length of it, and like I said, I think that very first episode is kind of a drag. And I was thinking, why is this whole episode with Spike and the sewer mutants in it, the Morlocks in here? Like, this seems like a massive waste of time. But then you realise, of course, that episode is all about Leech, and Leech is the entire reason they managed to beat Apocalypse. So I was like, okay, this all pays off. That's fine. I think it's really good. I think this isn't the advantage you get with a serial medium like a TV show versus a film is you have more time to build Apocalypse up, and you don't even see him for the first few episodes of this, and it makes him seem like he's very important. Like, they're desperately trying to stop the release of this super powerful mutant, and then even when you do see him, he's in his like withered form and everything. So it's quite a while before he actually even does anything, and that's actually quite effective. And then, like I was saying about how it does a very good job of showing how powerful he is. I think it's as much about not what he does, it's how others react to him that can be, or not just him, just generally with villains. I think it's as much about people's reaction to them as them. And I really like the idea that, like, even the Sentinels are trying to take Apocalypse down. Like, this is this enormous, right, everybody, I don't care who doesn't like who, we all have to team up to fight Apocalypse, and that really sold how powerful he was.
Yeah, and because all these character moments are happening throughout, like, it's about Apocalypse, but it's about, like, what Apocalypse is doing to people, and the issues he's stirring up with that. And I think it's very interesting, very well done. Of everything we watched, it's the one I'll most likely rewatch again sooner rather than later, just because I thought it was kind of interesting and I want to pick up on some more things. But, it was, I have to say that note, the closing montage was so somber. It did impact me a lot, because even though I don't love this show a lot, I love the character so much, and I couldn't help but feel sad about it.
Yeah, I really hope we see more emo teenage Scarlet Witch, because that was fun.
Yeah, and I do think by this point they managed. I think early on, when the actual X-Men team was the kids getting caught up in the adventures, it was a little tedious. But when you have the younger teens, like, I don't know, like Cannonball, Multiple Man being like the goofy kids who have the teenage adventures, but you then also have the X-Men team being the serious X-Men team, I think that was kind of a cool balance.
Yeah, and that's theoretically what X-Men is about, and that's why it's popular.
And I think that's kind of actually the best way to go overall, possibly, is to have some combo of the two.
Yeah. And I think we had an issue with the Horsemen in the film. I think they work quite well here, because all four of them are characters that have already been established. Fans know who Psylocke is and Angel is and whatever. But within these films, three of those characters were new, essentially. Yeah. And Magneto was the only one who we knew anything about. And I wonder if maybe with the film, they were scared of having Apocalypse literally brainwash like characters that were heroic, like kind of what happened here, because that's what Loki did in the Avengers, and they didn't want to seem like they were copying it. But I don't know. It worked here, I thought, quite well. And also, like you said to me, not on the episode, like off camera, quote unquote, off mic, that would be the phrase. You said you liked how they're split up and all sent to different locations. Like, yes. Again, I think that works very well. Because they did that in the animated series too, and I was like, wow, this is such a simple but effective way of just like making the action a little bit more interesting. And so I think
what's kind of interesting is that we've now seen 3 on-screen portrayals of Apocalypse, and we've seen the approach to the horse people tackled differently in all 3 of them. In the animated series, it's really, at least the original in season 1, it's just Mystique and then 3 nameless, minions.
It's Angel. Like, Mystique is his helper, not his horse.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Angel and 3 nameless minions.
Yes.
So there's not a ton of investment in the actual,
Yeah, and it wasn't like Angel was on the main team or anything. Like, they used Angel here and there. So
yeah,
it didn't
I think
have
it actually may have even been an introduction.
I think it was, actually. Yeah.
In the show, which was interesting. And then in this one, in Evolution, it's for the main characters. It's, especially Xavier and Storm were in it from the beginning. Mystique pretty much too, and Magneto was looming in the shadows in the beginning, but was pretty much a regular character by that point. But they're also completely brainwashed. There's no conflict for them there, because at this point they're just zombies.
Yeah.
And there was particularly, Xavier in particular looked very goofy this whole time, and I didn't quite understand how, even if you enhanced his powers, he was able to destroy Sentinels with his mind. But
I love that every single time Xavier is either brainwashed or having a dream or anything like that, he can walk.
Yes.
It's just
we must show this man walking as often as possible, even when it's not an actor.
Yeah.
And then in Apocalypse, where they try to... This seems like the best approach in theory, which is like they're actually trying to give all the characters a motivation for doing it. And that seems like the best way to do it, right? But Apocalypse is such a two-dimensional thing that it's nearly impossible to come up with a believable reason for why any of them would do it, right?
Yeah. And it's also...
like, Magneto is like, has a dark side, definitely willing to cause mass destruction, but destroying the Earth, not really in his character's wheelhouse.
Yeah, and it also doesn't do a great job of explaining why he even needs them. Like, the closest they ever... I mean, they're guarding the pyramid while he does the body transfer. I understand that is why he has them, but they seem far less... Like, he seems infinitely more powerful than them. Like, he can accomplish this without even taking Xavier's power, blah, blah, blah. Whereas in Evolution, like, having them... Because there's these 4 pyramids that are vital to his plan, and then the central area, and they're all off at a different pyramid, and it makes sense. And you have, as you said, like, personal connections between each team and who they're fighting, and you have, like, I think Rogue is telling Wanda, he's not your dad. No, don't think of him as your dad right now.
Kitty, right?
Oh, Kitty. Okay, sure. It worked really, really well. I think this is probably the best depiction of Apocalypse we've had outside of comic book pages.
Yeah, and it was impressive. It was just an impressive adaptation. I doubt we'll ever see a better one. Because Marvel Animation is so tied to Marvel Studios in terms of like politics. I don't think we're getting another animated X-Men anytime soon. So
yeah, it's weird. I do believe they still can, if they choose to, make X-Men cartoons, but they're not. Like, they are so tied, as you said, in the universe. Like, there's a Guardians of the Galaxy cartoon, and
it's just
Spider-Man, and
they're basically using all of their non-film properties to promote their film projects, and they don't have X-Men, so they're not promoting X-Men.
Yeah, which is a shame. As we'll get into.
But this was an impressive. If you're going to go for broke with your end game, you can't do it much better with this than with a cartoon.
Yeah, I was very, very impressed. I don't know how we line up age-wise, but fun fact: Apocalypse was voiced by the dude who did Megatron in the Beast Wars cartoon, which I watched when I was young, and I thought I recognised this voice as a melancholy.
Beast Wars. I woke up at 6:00 every morning to watch Beast Wars before school.
Hell yeah! Well, there you go. Apocalypse was voiced by the dude who did Megatron.
Yeah, the Velociraptor guy, one of the greatest conflicted heroes in early cartoon history.
Yes, exactly. And I think Magneto was that dude from Stargate. The very large African American man.
But it was, I think, it's what's sad is that the show probably ended in a place where they were really in a great place to do great things, and then it probably had to end.
Yeah, I think maybe, again, I don't remember enough of it, but it kind of seems like those first 2 seasons weren't all that well received or weren't that good, and then as it started to get good, it had already, the time had run out on it.
I mean, the first season, I remember the first season very, very well. The cast was very, very limited. And there was a heavy emphasis on the high school. It was like the brotherhood that just felt so unimportant. There's this. You don't have to be in large scale all the time, but the stakes were just not high on any way. But they progressively got more and more ambitious with it until they finally ended in a great place.
Yeah, and. I said to Mike already, and I'm going to repeat it here. Evolution is a really good title for this series because you can see how they got from that original animated series to what we're going to be talking about next time, Wolverine and the X-Men, through this. You can see how it evolved into Wolverine and the X-Men, which segues into what we're going to be talking about next time, which is Wolverine and the X-Men. We both feel this is an incredible series that needs fully talking about, because after going back and dipping into my beloved animated series, I will now listen to arguments that Wolverine and the X-Men is much better than it.
Not just better, it's much better.
Yes. Okay, well there you go. Argument settled, no need for an episode. But yeah, this is the first of 2 bonus episodes. We are going to get into the second one next time with Wolverine and the X-Men. We're going to attempt to watch all of it, as there's only 23, 24 episodes, something like that. But we got some time to do that. And we're going to talk about all of Wolverine and the X-Men, which, if you haven't seen, you should go see, because otherwise you're going to be just listening to us talk about it for quite a while and be very lost.
Yeah, I think the audience, if you're listening to this and finding out about it, you have about a week. We have about 2 weeks, though, so respectful.
Exactly.
Yeah, but we're going to be endeavoring to watch all of it. Speaking of that, comparing it, though, what I just saw from Evolution, I think was better than anything X-Men the Animated Series ever did.
Yeah, okay, I'd listen to that. I mean, it's hard. I've only watched a few big arcs, but it's hard to deny that.
Yeah. And I do think that's a product of time more than anything else, because I do think if you took the approach of the animated series and applied it to X-Men Evolution with the better animation, with the better dialogue, we would have had a better product. But,
Well, I mean, X-Men the Animated Series is a kids' show, and I wonder if Evolution... Obviously, they're going for kids, but they might have almost been going for people who did watch that original series. So it is aiming up a little bit more. And I think Wolverine and the X-Men seems to be aiming up even further. So there is that as well. It is hard to watch these classic kids shows that are definitely for kids. Not just, it's a kids show, but adults like it. It's difficult to watch those now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Evolution, this arc, very, very good. Don't know about the rest of the series.
Just a YouTube X-Men Apocalypse. Just a second. I'll even tell you more specifically.
I did do that. It's surprisingly high up on the list.
Yeah, X-Men Apocalypse, parentheses, the movie. And it's the first one.
There you go.
It's pretty ambitious. Check it out.
Yeah, if you got some time, sit down and watch that.
Yeah, you got 2.5 hours ago. Watch this cartoon.
Yeah, struggle through that first 20 minutes, and then it all gets good. There's X-Men fighting giant Egyptian statues. It's pretty cool.
I like that. Yeah, if you type it in X-Men Apocalypse the movie, it's the first one. I did like that statue desperately crawling, just determined to destroy all of them. The spider.
Yeah. Oh, giant spider ghost, you will be remembered by us fondly forever. Anyway, we will be back next time with Wolverine and the X-Men. Go watch it if you haven't. Give yourself a refresher if you have. But yeah, we'll be back, and then we will have officially run out of X-Men projects, and we'll have to think about what happens from there. So, like, comment, subscribe, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, all the places. If you're listening to this, you've got all the links. I bombard every channel with all of them. But yeah, help us out here. And until next time, goodbye, everybody.